Greetings, chess fans. Today I have prepared for you a pretty special video because I am making it as a tribute to one of the most exciting games I saw recently, and it happened in the Latvian Championships, but not in the men division, but in the women's championship between two promising bright stars, Maria Kuznetsova and Naomi Maklakova. Both of them are 15 years old, and I think it's fair to say they are the future and probably the core of the Latvian national women team. And the particular game was played in round two, and I was quite surprised that at the end of the tournament there was an award of the most beautiful games. And this game was not selected as the winner. And basically, the argument was that you shouldn't be really handing two prizes for the same person because ultimately Maria Kuznetsova became a Latvian champion among women and Naomi finished in the 6th place, but I think it fully deserved the special prize. So that's why I'm making this video, to recognize that chess can and should be played creatively. Here we go. So Maria is playing with a white color. She played e4. Naomi responded e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. The boring Italian, right? Wait a second, just give it one more move. Bishop c5, and how do you play chess? Boom! Of course, b4. So if you have watched my videos, the ultimate opening tire list from the whites and blacks perspective, I actually highly regard the Evans Gambit. It's not bad, it's creative, and that's why also this is a call to some content creators. You can promote actually good gambits that give white very good chances and not some tricks only, right? So the Evans Gambit, I think it deserves a bit more than it currently gets, and the big idea is that after bishop takes on b4, here white played c3, and white is winning some tempi to accelerate development. Now, naturally here black has the traditional move bishop a5 with the idea to slow down white from playing d4, but guess what? White still plays d4, after e takes on d4, plays like in the romantic chess era, short castle, and let's say black is completely oblivious what is happening here, queen b3, hitting the pawn here, there goes the swift development, there goes knight takes on c3, white is down 2 pawns but has huge initiative. Now this is the perfect chess basically how to play. But of course, I mean, black is not supposed to do all of that, and to my knowledge the simplest response to the Evans Gambit is to play bishop e7, meeting white's d4 with knight a5. So white is pushed away with the bishop cannot stay on this long diagonal, and after bishop d3, black uses the term, as I call it, selling back the pawn for the right price and plays d6. The point is queen a4 check gives nothing, attacking the knight and giving the check to the king. Black always plays c6 and protects the knight, and he is just fine. So d takes, knight e5, knight f6, again queen a4 gives nothing, and black successfully completes development. Now, this is something that the pros really know well, and there is like a common understanding between competitive players that what you play then against Evans, sure, you just play bishop e7 and knight a5 and problem solved. But again, I mean, there's definitely some other choices. So I think that Naomi was surprised, or she didn't remember something correctly, or Maria found a glitch or something underworked in Naomi's opening prep, and here black played bishop d6. Now, bishop d6 might look like an awkward move to you, but actually what the black is planning to do, black wants to play knight f6, short castle, rook e8, the bishop f8, and this idea sometimes is seen in some, I believe in the 4 knights formation, the bishop sometimes on d6 stands perfectly well, so the idea is not really that bad. But to be honest, after d4 knight f6, had here white continue with the simple short castle, and rook e1, I mean, we can assume that for black accepting the pawn on e4, the move before was pretty dangerous. Here white simply develops a long-term pressure and black experiences some problems with development. Like, let's say h6 is necessary to stop any knight g5 ideas hitting the pawn on f7, white completes development, rook e8, and I think the simplest one is to play queen b3, queen e7, bishop d3, and white enjoys a lasting initiative. So that's why this line for black is pretty dangerous. Let's say knight c4, bishop b7, and here white has a very, very powerful idea. d5, knight e8, take on d6, and play this position like a nimzo. So there's a line in the nimzo where white has the pawn on c3. Actually, here you don't need it. The point is you play bishop b2, play g3, remove the knight, play f4, and just storm black's position. So it's a very, very powerful concept, and I suppose Maria, with the white color, simply did not know this line that well. So, but she went something more exciting. She played knight g5, hitting the pawn on f7, show castle, boom, f4. By the way, remember this moment. So the concept is pretty crazy. White is ready to sack the pawn to carry out e5, and this already means that black has to sacrifice a piece. The question is how to do it. I think it actually made a bit more sense to take on d4 because this would eliminate the central pawn. And now after e5, black would have to pick up a pretty non-trivial move, bishop c5, with the idea that after e takes on f6, there's d5, and black, even though he's down a piece, takes over the game. Like bishop d3, rook e8 check, king f1, h6, and somehow black is better. Yeah, don't ask me how, but again, black has 3 pawns for the minor piece, the white king is a bit exposed, and at least here black takes over the initiative. But it didn't happen in the game because Naomi decided to take on f4. Here e5 followed, and again I think it was a better choice just to take on e5, bishop takes on e5, still follow with the same idea at d5 and then see what happens. But I suppose black was not really sure what happens with the pawn on f4, because if it falls, so at the moment black has 4 pawns for the sacrificed minor piece. If the pawn falls, then possibly in the middle game the minor piece will be stronger. And this was Kuznetsov's idea, I think, all along. So instead, here black played queen e7, and here white responded to queen e2. Now, these are not the most accurate moves. Perhaps white should have played bishop takes on f4, collect the pawn, reinforce the pawn on e5. But I think what Maria quite did not like it is that the e takes on d6 threat is delayed for one move, and she was probably not really sure what happens if black plays something like knight a5, retreats with the bishop, and yeah, what is this, yeah? So that's why she decided to collect the piece, and here black didn't really have a choice. So black decided to take on e5, decided to trade the queens. I think also bishop takes on e5 was reasonable. Wait, bishop e5, I think it's bishop f4, right, okay. So black cannot do that, queen e5 is necessary, short castle, d5, and bishop d3. So, the first part of the excitement is over, and now we have a very difficult to evaluate middle game. White has a minor piece for 4 pawns, but one of them is under attack. So it's safe to assume if white will manage to get the pawn on f4, white probably is not at least worse. And she's hoping that in the middle game, the extra piece is going to prevail and those pawns are going to fall. So it's natural that black played h6, bishop d3. Maria was trying to improve the pieces, again, threatened to collect a pawn. Black played g5, makes perfect sense. And yeah, what do? I suppose you need to complete your development at some point. So here, white played knight e2, bringing more pieces in the game. So Maklakova wanted to play c5, I suppose, to get rid of this annoying knight. But first she decided to include a6 just in case. Otherwise, maybe there's some knight b5 stuff at the wrong moment, hitting the bishop on d6, hitting the pawn on c7. So a6 looks really reasonable. Maria responded with a4, not allowing black to advance at the queen side. Otherwise, if you give black a chance, black's gonna push those pawns to c5 and b5, creating an armada of pawns. Black completed development, and Maria is like, okay, let's go. Let's play c4. Let's fire it up. So the big idea is after c4, white invites a trade, now takes on c4, activate the pieces, and somehow just hope it's gonna work. And this is where stuff starts to get really out of hand, really crazy. So black plays c5. I mean, this is a perfectly reasonable move, threatening the knight on d4. I'm not really sure why knight f5 was not really a move here. I think it looked pretty reasonable. I suppose there could be something like a capture, and I don't know what, actually, maybe bishop b5, bishop d4, and somehow black is completely fine. But here, Kuznetsova decided to play bishop a3, pinning the bishop on d6, right? So if you take on d4, I'm going to take on d6, and the tactical struggle continues. Black played rook c8, kind of makes sense, freeing the f8 square for the bishop, just in case, also avoiding some knight f5 stuff. White played rook b1, counterattacking the pawn on b7. Black played bishop f8. Now the point is, you cannot take on b7 because the knight on d4 is under attack. White played knight f3. So up to this moment, I think the feeling White was having is that probably she's doing all right because the pawn on b7 is hit, the pieces are standing pretty well, and there's also the knight e5 idea, or maybe h4 idea, try to harass the black pawns at the king side. And now comes the major surprise. Boom, b5. Do you remember the opening phase of the game? So earlier in the opening, it was Kuznetsova. Let me just roll it back. She played here, f4, with an idea, I can conquer your e5 square. And I can imagine only this, that Maklakova was sitting in black and she was looking for the revenge. I mean, okay, here you go. I can do the same to you. You do this to me, I can do the same to you as well. So the point is, obviously, you cannot play 8x on b5, 8x on b5. The bishop on a3 suddenly gets exposed and the pawn on c4 is dropping. So the line continued with c6 on b5 and bishop b2, an important intermezzo move. So White walks away with the bishop, hits the knight on f6, and collects the pawn on b5. I think that Naomi saw all of this, so this was an actual pawn sacrifice to get the dynamic game. This is why I really love this game. So black played knight g4, and after bishop takes on b5, black played bishop f5. So White has gained back the extra one of the pawns, and now it's 3 pawns for the minor piece. The position remains a complete mess, and black has a fantastic piece activity. Rook c1 followed, great move c4, enabling the dark swap bishop with some bishop c5 ideas. So White played rook e1, and both of the players are really playing textbook chess right now. Maybe according to a chess engine, they're not really the most critical or most precise moves, but I also strictly follow the rule. When you don't really know what to do, at least you can always improve your pieces. And this is what they're doing. They're improving their pieces and hoping for the best. So Naomi played knight e3. Here White just in case walk away with king h1, which in the hindsight is maybe a bit slow move, but I suppose here Maria was a bit concerned about some future bishop c5 and maybe there's going to be some discovered checks or something. Maklakova played bishop b4, there comes bishop c3 dealing with the pin, and here black made a small inaccuracy. This bishop takes on c3. I think that black bishop was very strong and there was no need for black to simplify the position, but it was coming with a very concrete idea. So black took on c3 and played knight c2, and I think that she fully expected that White's going to play rook c1, black could play knight b4 with some knight a2 fork ideas or knight e3, and eventually try to push forward those central pawns. So I think this was the idea, but probably she either missed or misevaluated the counterattack with rook e5. That's why, once again, I really love this game. Both of them, they're playing it for a win and definitely enjoying the moment. So black is charging forward and trying to take over the game. White says, no, I want to play the game here, not you. So after rook e5, the bishop on f5 and the pawn on d5 is hit. Naomi had to win back, knight e3. White charges forward, knight e4 hits the bishop, bishop d3. I think there's a very famous brew in the Russian-speaking community. We call it kisel. Do you know what is a kisel? It's like you throw a lot of things. It's sort of a pudding, I don't know. And it looks exactly like this. It's murky and you kind of drink it. But I have no idea what is this. But all I see is there's a one huge kissel in the middle of the board. A lot of pieces are either somehow protected or hanging, and this usually brings a lot of excitement. So the game continues. Maria plays king g1, tries to improve the king. Maklakova does the same. She plays king f8. White charges forward h4. Here the pawn on g5 is hit, and I suppose there was something that Naomi did not like. I think she could have played g4 with the idea to play g3 and arrest the king on g1 at some point. And if white plays g3 to hit the knight on e3, at least remove the support. Black plays f6, black plays king f7, and somehow, I did not check this line, but I think there's probably something alien as g takes on f4 and knight f5. The knight on d4 is hanging, the rook on e6 is not enough having support, and black takes over the game. Yay, real easy. But here, black instead played f6. I suppose it's also a reasonable move. Rook e6, king f7, rook b6, so both of these moves make perfect sense. White already is thinking, do some really bad things with rook b7, go after the king, maybe h5 stuff at some moment, so black played rook a7. So the status quo still remains. White has the minor piece, black has the 3 pawns, and a complete chaos or the kissel on the board. Black continue with white played knight c6 here, and now comes a twist. Black plays rook c7, white plays knight e4, white doesn't really see what else to do, and here black had some exciting opportunities. For example, black could have played g takes on h4. I mean, why not? Completely ruin your pawn structure on the king side. I have no idea what is this. I think it actually deserves a special name in terms of the pawn structure. The king in the middle of those 4 pawns feels like super costly or something, I don't know. But the big idea is to open up the G file to go after the pawn on G2. So this was an amazing move that Naomi missed. And after knight e6, rook g8, knight f4, black plays rook g4. And here it seems that white's position is collapsing. The knight on f4 is hit. The pawn on g2 is about to fall. And probably all white should do is take a sip of coffee and coolly play knight c4. Like, what? The kissel continues, obviously, as you can see, because after knight x on c4, there's like million pins. For example, after d takes on c4, there's knight e3. You cannot take on d3. The rook on c7 is hit. How about I give you a fork? I fork the rook on c3, knight on b6. White plays, no, I give you a pin first. I play bishop takes on c4, pinning your king on f7. Now, black sacrifices here. I mean, it's not even a sacrifice, and somehow it ends with an equal position. Okay, that's pretty exciting. Now, instead of this, white could play, black could play bishop takes on c4. The knight is hanging, and after knight e6, rook takes on g2 check, king h1. There's a casual d4. Again, everything is literally hanging on the board, and somehow after rook c4, bishop c4, it ends with what even is this? The legend says it's chill. It's an equal position. So there you go. Pure cinema, to be honest. I mean, all of these lines, this could have happened after g takes on h4. I mean, the game was pretty close to this. Like, those lines are really insane. Black played rook e7, and Maria is like, okay, knight c6, you know, this is such a tense game. Let us maybe call it a day. Let's make a draw. Rook c7, knight e4. Let's shake hands and go home. Naomi's like, boom, no, rook takes on c6. I want to continue. So where's the big idea? After bishop takes on c6, Naomi suddenly sees there's a checkmate idea. How about I play rook e1, g4, g3 and try to checkmate you? So black at the moment is playing down a full rook. Why play bishop takes on d5 check? It's necessary. And here it's, quite difficult to criticize black for playing king g6. Black could have played king g7 and a hint that maybe this was the smarter move. And now there's some crazy ideas. I think it was here. Let me try to remember it. Yeah. So rook takes on c4, rook e1 check. Here, bishop takes on c4, and casually white includes knight f3, intermezzo move. The rook on e1 is hit, and the bishop on c4 is under attack. So this is the line. There was also another line. So this is, by the way, what happened in the game, king g6. Let me just show you what happens if white plays the casual normal move like rook c1. So white hits the knight on d1 and tries to defend. Black gives the check, king h2, and black plays g4. So the big idea is to play g3 and I suppose a bishop f5 check, and it's a casual checkmate with the bishop. Also, you can play g3 with yourself because there's going to be rook e2 and rook d2 and black's attack continues, easy peasy. So white could play h5 check, and accepting the pawn is pretty dangerous because I already forgot why it's dangerous. Because the point is after king g5 there's knight f3 check. Yeah, just a casual piece sacrifice, and after bishop takes on f3, suddenly there's no checkmate, the knight on d1 is pinned, and white wins. So the line continues with h5 check, black plays king g7 here, and now after rook b7 here there's some fascinating lines. For example, black can play, for example, king f8. How do you stop, by the way, g3 and bishop f5 and rook h1 check because the rook on c1 is pinned? You just give a check here, you play rook g7, and after g3 takes, king g3, you are somehow winning because of the outside pass pawn. I mean, what? Alright, I got it. So this maybe is not really that insane. So how about king h8? Not allowing the rook g8 stuff, stopping the g3? So white gives a check, rook b8, king h7, and just plays knight e4. And if black continues with f5, getting rid of the knight, just knight g3 and everything is good and white is winning. I think actually the line still continues, but all of this is insane. When I was watching this, I was like, it was a mind-boggling experience. Anyway, I'm sure the goals calculated all of this. So after h5 check, Anom is like, okay, let's charge forward. You got it. King is also a piece. I mean, this is what they teach to the best kids, is that you should not be protecting your king. You should charge forward. So essentially here, Naomi is recreating an immortal king walk. So Nigel Short quietly sits in the corner with his king walk, which was a king h2, king g3, king f4, king g5, king h6 against Lehman, I think it was, right? And after bishop f3 check, black just plays king h4. Why not? Because I can just do it. So here bishop takes on d1 followed, rook e1 check, king f2, rook takes on d1. And you think the complications are finished? No, I mean black is not done, because at the moment black is down a full rook for who knows how many pawns. The knight on d2 cannot walk. There's going to be checkmate in one thread, and the king on h4 also has a say. For example, the line could continue knight f3 check, here knight e1, and black just repeats the position with rook d2, rook d1. Compared to the other exciting lines, this one is pretty boring. So instead of this, here Kuznetsova played rook b2 so that the knight on d2 is protected, which in return defends the f1 square, and black uses literally every single resource she has in the position. So how about we just go for the checkmate? Kuznetsova is looking at the position, she doesn't really see the checkmate. Okay, let me push forward a pawn, a5. And actually here black could have played a very cool king g5. So the point of king g5, white plays a6, black plays g3, king f3, and f5. So where's the threat? The threat is if you play a7, there's rook e1, and suddenly you cannot stop this threat. How about that? If you play knight x on c4, actually you have a very nice choice here. You can just give a checkmate like this. You can give a checkmate like this. And rook f2 is rook f2. Either way, black is winning. So after f5, black would have to take it and take it. Black gives a check, plays rook a1. This pawn is a monster. White doesn't have the time to play rook b6 to protect the passed pawn. And it just finishes with a draw. Yeah, this is just a draw. I mean, 4 monstrous pawns, even though they're blocked, but none of the sides can make any progress. It didn't happen. Now, in the game, Maklakova played rook a1, which is a very human move. And by the way, do not forget that both of the opponents probably already were in the time scramble for quite a while. So unfortunately, there's no video. I would have loved to see the video of this game. So rook a1 is played. White tries to deflect the rook a6. Naomi is not paying attention to that. She just improves the king g5. She's clearly eyeing for this checkmate threat. a7 is played by white, and now it's such a shame that here Naomi did not play rook a7. I mean, the pawn has to go. And here's the key. After knight takes on c4, the position is incredibly unclear after g3. g3 check, king f3, and probably Naomi saw this position and thought, okay, I'm not doing anything here, so I cannot go here. But actually the line still continues with bishop g6 and bishop h5. How on earth do you stop that? Because, for example, if white goes rook b5, f5, that's a checkmate in one thread. Bishop h5, f3, engine says it's equal. This is completely equal. But actually, I would definitely pick with the black color all day long. All the pawns march forward. Whatever happens, happens. So this could have been a crazy finale. The other line that could have happened in the game, in this line, white could have played, I think it was king e2, yeah, here, king e2, bishop e4, king d1, just h5, h5, h4, play for pure domination. Stockfish this is completely equal, friends. I mean, there's nothing to see here. I beg to differ. I think, again, this could have been a totally crazy finish. And this absolutely masterpiece of a game finished with g3 check, king f3 and rook e1. And Naomi thought she saw a checkmate because apparently here rook e3 or rook f1 seemed to be the killing threat, but apparently she miscalculated. Now white can sacrifice the rook on d3, give a check on e4. By the way, knight c4 allows a 5 and there's rook f1 inevitable mate. So it's this close. But here white correctly played knight e4 check, king f5, and knight x on g3. And this is what Maklakova missed with the black color. The point is now she has no normal moves. After f takes on g3, white just promotes to a queen, and black's threats are over. So black resign. You know, after the round, I did not see this game during the when it was played, but after the game, another member of the Latvian national team, Latvian number 2, Nikita Meshkov, came to me and he said, "Did you see that game? Did you see the game? Check it out. You're gonna love it." And I went at home, I was like, wow, this is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so at the end of the tournament, when there was this special prize award ceremony, I felt that when they announced that they're gonna award the best games, I felt this is definitely it. And I even felt that my game, which I played against Kristaps Kruskans, my Immortal Scandi game, I made a video about it earlier, even though it was, according to the chess engine, almost a perfect attacking game in terms of the excitement and the beauty and imagination, it was not even close. This game. I mean, I think this game, these lines are the very reason why we love chess, and I think it also very nicely symbolizes the school of Latvian chess, which we have to thank to Michael Tal and some other very creative historical players from Latvia. This is how we play chess here in Latvia. This is why we love the game. So I would like to thank to both of the players, Maria Kuznetsova for the win, for Naomi Maklakova for the amazing imagination. Both of them are, again, 15 years old. Kuznetsova won the tournament, Maklakova finished in the 6th place, and I wish them to play many more exciting games like these ones. As for me, this video is officially over. If you like the game, please press like, leave your comments. Did you enjoy the variations? I definitely did. And of course, if you're not yet a sub, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's going to allow me to create more interesting video analysis like this one. I'm out of here. Have a great day.